They have a president or whatever he is. He gets elected, and the next term comes, he gets elected again because of the party.
See, that's unique. State of enterprises, the guy who lived in Rabbi, and then later became the head of the government. So
I don't know, there might be different tax They buy
I met Weissman. When he was the president.
I have to go to No, I didn't go. I only looked at
Okay, good evening everybody and welcome. Thank you. We are ready to learn a little? What do you think? Ready to learn a little?
Oh, we need
Nice haircut.
Right.
Okay. Good evening. This week we are starting a new Chumash. A new Chumash from the 5 books of Moses. We are now holding book number 4. The book is called Sefer Bamidbar. Bamidbar means in the desert. It is also called Sefer Apkudim, the book of Numbers. You can find it in Yechumashim on page 726. This is where the Parsha begins, 726. The Parsha begins with a new census, a new counting of Bnei Yisrael, of the Jewish people, as the Torah says on the first and second and third verse. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai be'oyel moyed. Hashem spoke to Moses b'midbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai, be'oyel moyed, in the tent of meeting, be'echad la'chodesh hasheni. They are now standing the first day of the second month, which is exactly a year and 2 weeks after they left Mitzrayim. The second year from Bashana Hashenis, Letzeiso mi'eretz Mitzrayim, the second year after the exodus from the land of Egypt. So they left Egypt a year earlier. They left Egypt on the 15th of the first month, and now they are on the first day of the second month, which means, in other words, they are in Rosh Chodesh Iyar, right? Rosh Chodesh Iyar, that's what it's called. So what does Hashem tell Moshe on the first day of Rosh Chodesh Iyar? This is the beginning of the 4th book. Se'u ez roish kol adas bnei Yisrael. Take a census, an account of the entire assembly of the bnei Yisrael, of the children of Israel, le mishpechoisom, according to their families, le veisavoisom, according to their father's household, meaning they are being counted according to their tribal belonging. And the tribal belonging is who the father is, not the mother. B'mispar shemois, kol zachar, by number of names, kol zachar, every male legulgeloisom, according to their head count. This is the idea of taking a census. A census. Obviously, being only 1 year after Yetziat Mitzrayim, and you realize that this is not the first time that they were actually counted. This is basically the third time which they were counted. They were counted once in the book of Shemot when they came out of Mitzrayim, and then they were counted again in the book of Vayikra. Come on, Balka, make yourself at home. They were counted again in the book of Vayikra.
Here.
Right after the story of the golden calf, they were also counted. Right? Hashem wanted to know how many of them left. Also, they were counted before, just 6 months earlier, when they each donated the half a shekel to the Mishkan, right? Remember, they all donated a half a shekel, and that half a shekel was also used for counting. That was Parshas Kisisa. In the book of Shemot, that was after the golden calf, we read on page 484, Hashem told Moshe, Kisisa is Rosh, you want to know how many of them are? V'nosnu ish koifer nafshoi, they should all give a half a shekel, and they counted the half a shekels, which later they purchased with these half a shekels, is what they purchased some materials for the Mishkan, right? And they knew exactly how many of them were. If you go later to Parshas Pekudei, just before the end of the book of Shmos, the last Parsha in the book of Shmos, so Moshe is taking the counting, and he counts it all up, and they were, let me ask, there was exactly 600,300, 603,550, right? That was the number. The same number is actually found in this Parsha. After you go through the list, all the way to the end, and it goes through every tribe, and every tribe individually, and how many there were, and all together. And when it comes to the end, it comes out the same number exactly on page 736 of today's Parsha. So it says, Eile Pkudei Bnei Yisrael Lebeis Avoisam. These are the countings of the children of Israel according to their father's household. Sheish Me'ois Elef, Ushloishes Halofid, Vachamesh Me'ois Vachamishim. Same thing, the same number exactly. 603,550. Nobody died for the last 6 months. No new babies were born in the last 6 months. So the commentaries are already discussing it, that basically the counting was, from this year to next year. That, not literally what happened in between. But this is the counting. And if they ended up with the same number, so the question becomes even again. If they are exactly the same number that they were 6 months earlier, why are you counting them again? And the commentaries are giving all kinds of insight, starting with Rashi. Rashi says simply, he likes them, so he counts them. You have something which is dear to you, something which is precious to you, so you keep on counting. There was no reason for that, in other words. Just simply, that's what Rashi says in the beginning of this week's Parsha, in Bamidbar. Mitoichi basam, moino isam kol sho. Just because they are dear to him, they are precious to him, that's why he counts them, he keeps on counting them. In this entire book, he's actually given the number of the name which is what? The name is counting. There is actually an interesting Ramban, Nachmanides, in this week's Parsha. He finds something interesting in the verse, a word which is not used in the previous countings. Torah begins, and verse 2 it says, Se'u roish kol adas bnei Yisrael. We should take a census of the assembly of the children of Israel, Mishpachoisam, B'mispar Shemos, according to their names. Then it says, Kol Zachor, each male, Legulgeloisam. What does the word Legulgeloisam mean? Every male according to their head count. This is the way the Torah specifically mentions it. Head count. Says the Ramban that what happened to this counting, something which wasn't in the previous countings. So he says that here, every single person had to walk by Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu actually referred to each one by name. By name. Moshe, Yaakov, Chatzkel, Shmerel, Beryl, Gatzel. Everybody was mentioned by name, B'mispar Shemos, according to their name, and each one was mentioned specifically by Moshe. In other words, the previous counting was people gave a half a coin, and they counted up all the coins. So now they saw, we have 603,000 coins. There must be 603,000 people. This time, it wasn't just counting them, in a general count, but rather they were all counted individually by name. That's why it says B'Shemois, and it was all done by Moshe Rabbeinu, meaning everybody had to walk by Moshe, and either Moshe knew them by name, I'm not sure exactly how it worked, or they introduced themselves. And Moshe said, Shmerel, welcome, Beryl, Levi, Mendel, Menachem, what?
Name tags.
Name tags maybe, Nuchem, whatever, right? They all had names. That's what it says in the Torah, names. This is what the Ramban says. Yeah. And he even mentioned something also interesting, that it was a special interest by God that they should walk by Moshe. Moshe, they should be recognized by Moshe. Moshe should mention them by name. Moshe should see them. What is the connection to this Parsha to obviously the holiday of Shavuot? And why am I mentioning this question? Because it's brought down in the Talmud that Parshas Bamidbar is always read before Shavuos. The Gemara says, the sages figured out the system that Bamidbar should always be before Shavuos. Sometimes, like this year in Israel, they are holding Nosoi ready. But never do we have Shavuos before Bamidbar. You can have 1 week later. Nassau can be another week, like this year in Israel, because they didn't have the second day Pesach on Shabbos. By us, the last day Pesach was Shabbos. So we read the holiday Torah reading. In Israel, it was already a regular Shabbos. I mean, they couldn't purchase chametz, but they had a regular Shabbos. So they went back to the Parsha Shmini. So they ended up being one Parsha ahead of us. Some point later, we're going to join together. But Bamidbar, says the Gemara, is always read before Shavuot. One reason the Gemara tells us, because remember last week there was a lot of curses. We don't want to go from the curses straight to the giving of the Torah. We want to have a break in the middle. Fine. But why Bamidbar? Bamidbar is not such a, it's hard to say those words, but it's not such an exciting Parsha. There's nothing going on in this big Parsha except numbers. If you like numbers, it's great. But if numbers is not your forte, this Parsha is not going to be very exciting. Might even be a little boring for you. This tribe, this amount of people, this amount of people. David Schneider will enjoy it. I don't know.
I enjoyed the end of it.
The end of it, okay.
which talks about my tribe.
You think it's a tribe. Anyway. You mean Koilach? That's in the 5 rules. What is the connection of Bamidbar and specifically is a Levite? What is the connection between Bamidbar and Shavuos specifically? The truth is, this is also something which is brought down and discussed by commentaries. We're going to elaborate on it a little bit. Is the idea that when a person looks on the holiday of Shavuos and he says, "Oh, were you at Sinai?" He says, "I was at Sinai, sure." So you were one of the 2 million people who studied at Sinai. Perhaps I was one of them. A lot of people, huh? Yes, there was a lot of people. Think that you were noticed among all those people. Sometimes, when it's such a big venue, so many people, it loses the value. People, even for themselves, they don't feel as important or as needed when there is such a great crowd. And there's only a few of us, and then you know it, everybody counts. Here on Shachris, during the week, in the morning, everybody knows that he is needed. Because we have really 10 people. In order to say Kaddish, we need to have a minyan. So if we have 9 without you, so we can't say Kaddish. You come in as a 10th, oh, you get a big Shalom Aleichem. And everybody notices who is here, and that's what makes it exciting. But when you stand together with another 2 million, then you become a statistic, you know, it's like, there were so many people here. It's not a personal story anymore. The message of this week's Parsha, according to many commentators, is the fact that you are being counted is to tell you and to remind ourselves that we all count as one. This is not 2 million, this is not 600,000, this is simply individuals, people who were counted, and each one gets one number, not more than one, not less than one. And once we count it all up, every number counts. Every person counts as a number. And why am I mentioning it? There's a famous discussion. This is actually a discussion in halacha, in Jewish law, but it's a discussion also in the world of ethics and morals. But we will discuss it from a halachic perspective. Let's consider the following scenario. You drive a car and you're losing your brakes, God forbid, and you're about to hit a group of 10 children who are standing on the side of the road, and there's no way you can stop it. There's an option. The option is to turn your wheel to the side. It happens to be there's only one Nebuch person who's sitting there. Just one single person. And it's either or you continue straight, and whatever happens, happens. And there's going to be, unfortunately, a tragedy of 10 kids losing their lives, or you turn the wheel. Either way, someone's going to lose his life. But a group of kids are going to lose their life because that's the direction the car is heading towards. The person who is parked on the side is going to lose his life because of what? Because I intentionally turned the wheel to save the group of kids at the expense of killing this one person. What do? Are you allowing the car to race the road and unfortunately create a tremendous tragedy of lives, many lives, young lives? Or you're going to kill a person who is just one person, maybe accomplished a lot of things in his life as far as age is concerned, and so instead of being gone in 10 years from now, and 5 years from now, so he finished his life a little earlier. What's the ethical approach? Train, right? The train is riding on the tracks, the train tracks. And there's a bus stopped right in the middle of the train tracks. couldn't continue. This is actually a story what happened. And the one riding the train has a choice. He can either, get off a little, maybe he'll sit in a group of people. What? What are you saying?
They're on a track.
They have no choice.
They have no choice. Oy. What do? Here is a Rambam. The Rambam tells us very clear, absolutely not. You never take the life of one individual, even of the expense of many others. The Rambam makes it very clear that you do not actively, directly give up the life or take the life of one individual, even at a time that many others might get killed by not doing it.
You're not allowed to make the choice, right?
No, exactly not.
You're
Let
not
me read you what the
allowed to
Rambam
make the
says.
choice.
If a Gentile told a group of Jews, give us one of you to kill. If not, we will kill all of you. So basically it's a time of persecution. And there was a group, 20 Jews are together, and they were caught by the gangsters. And they give them a choice. They say, you see, this guy, you give us this guy, which we know is the guy who, who threatened us, is the guy who abandoned us, whatever their issue is, why they want that specific guy. But they want one guy. And by delivering one person, they tell them, your life is saved. We're not going to do anything to you. Just one person. You are 20. Says the Rambam, Yehorgu kulam, ve'al yimseru lohem nefesh achas miYisrael. Says the Rambam, they should all allow themselves all to be killed, rather than give over a single soul to the Gentiles. If that person was a person who was anyway liable to the death penalty, as the Rambam brings an example of Sheva ben Bichri. Sheva ben Bichri is a story which is being discussed in the book of Shmuel 2. Sheva ben Bichri called for a revolt against King David, and he was actually punished, he was sentenced to death. He was forced to die. And there was a whole story, Yoav ben Tzruya was the commander of chief, pursued Sheva ben Bichri, who Sheva ben Bichri was hiding. He took refuge in the city of Avel, and Yoav was the one who surrounded the city, with an entire army and so on, and basically told them, guys, either you're giving Sheva over, or I'm going to kill you all. In such a case, since Sheva was anyway liable to death, says the Rambam, yes, they should deliver Sheva ben Bichri, even though he says, we don't rule it originally, so this itself is all discussion. What does the Rambam mean? You don't rule it. Yes or no? He says, yes, but if you ask the rabbi should not tell you yes. Okay? Separate discussion. But then he concludes, again, but if this person which they are asking for is not obligated to die, Yehorgu kulam, they should all allow themselves all to be killed. Ve'al imseru lohem nefesh achas miYisrael, rather than to give over a single soul of Israel. What is the idea here? Think to yourself, does that make sense? Many lives many opportunities, many, developments. You're talking about a whole group of many great potential life which is going to continue growing and producing. And here you had one person. So why wouldn't you give him? Doesn't it make sense to give? Usually we follow the majority, right? The majority is usually the ones who take precedence. So why wouldn't we consider the majority count? Why are you allowing yourself to lose so many lives just for one person? There was a very big story, 1982. I mean, I can't say I remember the story. I mean, I was there, but I can't remember. But I remember there was a discussion. When I look back, that must have been the discussion. There was the famous collapse of the Israeli government building in Tzor in Lebanon. A big tragedy. I think it was like 90 or something soldiers trapped and died. Yeah. It was called the Tzor disaster number 1 because they had another disaster after that. Something like that. You can find it, I'm sure, on Wikipedia and anywhere. So this was 1982, and apparently there were many soldiers who were trapped under the rubble beneath the building. There were some soldiers, very few, which were on the higher floor, but to rescue them, you couldn't use machinery. You had to literally remove the sand by hand. But it takes a long time. And while they will be busy in removing the sand and the dust by earth to save and to rescue the very few which were on the top floor, meantime they are losing many lives who are in the bottom floor, which for that they need to come up with tractors and big machinery to remove rocks and rubble and so on. And it was a very difficult moment. And they were asking the Rabbanut in Israel, are they allowed to come up with those big bulldozers in order to save the many lives which are trapped under, but at the same time you're going to lose the very few which are on top? You know what the answer was? Absolutely not. You have to figure it out. We're not giving up, or basically by coming up with those bulldozers on the top, they would have killed 1 or 2, 3 of those soldiers which are trapped in the top in order to save the many others. But no. What is the reason? What's the rationale? So the Kesef Mishnah, the famous Bes Yosef Karo, wrote a commentary on the Rambam. He says simply, the Torah says, do not kill, lo yisirtzach. It's in the 10 Commandments. We are to be very, very strict with that rule. You can't kill. The Torah doesn't say don't kill 10, don't kill 20. Don't. Lo yisirtzach. Killing a person, murdering a person, is murdering a person. We don't know whose life is more expensive, whose life has more value. 1 against 10, 10 against 100. Yes, in our simple minds, in our logical minds, we think sense makes quantity takes precedence. Quantity has a meaning. Rambam says no. If you're going to start calculating when it comes to taking lives, you're going to end up taking lives even in a time when the calculation is not going to be necessary. Life is going to start to become, cheap. This life, that life. He says a story, Rabbi Lau, the former chief rabbi of Israel, that is going to be here in June 24th. One of his stories, he says that he was traveling. He was at a interfaith convention, which was dealing with the issue of life. And he was discussing this topic with this Rambam, this very Rambam that we are now learning. The fact that even one person cannot be delivered even at the expense of taking so many other people. And there was a discussion, and others got up and tried to disagree. And there was a professor there, I don't remember from where, apparently was a very well-known doctor or professor, and he said, I want to just share a story. And he says that when he was a doctor, he was a young doctor in training, and he was in the emergency room. And there came in, they brought in, he was about to leave, to walk out after finishing his day of work. And just on his way out, they just brought in a stretcher with a person that looked a disaster. Blood all over, looked terrible, rushing him into the emergency room, and they got to take care of him. Apparently, he was a farmer who was chopping wood, and by mistake, the big ox, went into his head instead of to the tree. Right? He splashed his head completely. And now he's like the open head. This is terrible. And they are calling the family to find. They need blood effusion. So they're looking for the identical, which blood is the identical blood, the type of that individual. And they had 3 children who are coming in to the emergency room. And while the doctors are working and trying to figure out how to save his life, and lo and behold, one of the children said, look, we had a small discussion. We decided that Dad lived enough years. He had already his life. And he sat down. The doctor sat down. He didn't continue the conversation. Obviously, that was the biggest message for all the leaders who were joining this convention where Rabbi Lau is presenting his case. They didn't need to hear more than that story. I mean, I'm saying it a little kabubble. Rabbi Lau knows how to say it the way Rabbi Lau knows how to say a story. But you can imagine. He lives enough, enough nicht, must speak. They say in Hebrew, must speak. Must speak means enough. This is what the Torah tells us. According to Rabbi Yosef Karo, according to the commentaries, the Torah tells us we cannot, and we do not want, the Torah does not want you to look at life to be in any level considered cheap. And for that, we are going to go towards the idea of taking a life. We're going to go with the full stringency to the last extreme core, telling you, no, you would never turn your will against your car against a person. Even in your mind, you have this old great idea of saving more lives. Sorry, you turning your car against a person, actively taking a life, is forbidden.
But it's absolutely different story than the last one. So the children said no. What's wrong with the children? There was nothing.
They're not allowed.
It will not kill them if they will donate blood.
Nothing. The idea, no. The story only tells you that somebody does not have the Torah value of life. So when he sees the father lying with the open head, while the doctors are doing everything possible to save the life, but they are like, it's over, so not. We don't need to. No need to find
there is no
a type of blood. That's the idea. That's the story. No, obviously there was no choice in that story. It was a simple bad choice.
bad choice.
Realizing that life is unimportant. That's what it is.
What do you do with a person who is very ill, been ill for a long time, and there's really nothing that can be done for a person like that, for a person in that situation? And what they do in hospital and so on, what they do is they give them all kinds of drugs and all kinds of things, and the person is a vegetable and so on, and so they're continuing their life through these processes.
That's what it is.
So
What's the question? One second.
So what is the thought on that? What is the thought? What do you do?
The thought of that subject is obviously is a big subject in every situation. It's a big subject in Jewish law, but I can only give you in general. So don't take it literally. But in general, the Torah approach is that we never actively involve ourselves in taking someone's life. Never. This is murder. Whatever way you're going to translate this, we consider murder. There's nothing to discuss. We never will actively go and cause someone's life to end. Prolonging a life of suffering, this is where the issue comes. How do you prolong it? Is there a need to prolong it? But then the answer is depends. Obviously, if there is an option for cure, so you do whatever you can. When there is no option of cure, you cannot stop that life, but you don't need to treat it with curing medicine. What you need to do is to provide it with oxygen. You have to provide a person with nutrition. I saw in front of my eyes people who were dying from starvation. Just because the kids felt that their father does not want to live longer, and they let him die, but he didn't die from the sickness, he died from hunger. He died from thirst. He died from a lack of oxygen. This you don't do. But you don't need, for example, if somebody's on a respirator, you can't go and unplug the respirator in order to stop his life. This you don't do. Why? Because you are stopping him directly from living. You're actively involving yourself in stopping his life. But if somebody is not on a respirator and is, for cancer from head to toe, and there's no way that the doctors have a medicine to cure him, do you need to put him on a respirator? The answer could be no. But at the same time, you will provide him nutrition and oxygen. That's in general the idea. Okay, Liz, that wasn't the plan. Okay, so let's calm down here. Everything is good. Give it a cup of water. We're not discussing life and the life after life. We are discussing simply a concept of this week's Parsha. You want to ask a question?
No, I mean, just to follow up, I was once told, because my father was very sick and he passed away, and what they said is that you don't have to take extraordinary measures.
The what?
You don't have to take extraordinary measures. This is what the rabbi said.
That extraordinary measure means that if there is no cure, so if there's no cure, then there is no cure. And just to prolong a life of suffering, there's no need. But at the same time, you do not stop it. We do not get involved. Sometimes people keep you on a respirator for a long time. I used to go visit a lady in the hospital on 9th Avenue, what is it called?
Swedish? Or Virginia Mason?
No, on 9th and James, the famous trauma hospital. Harborview. I was there probably almost a year and a half. No, yeah, more than a year for sure. She was in surgery, she went into a coma or whatever. She was in surgery or something. And she was like, almost over a year, she was on a respirator. Over a year. And, used to come, she was just lying in bed, she was breathing to the tube. The doctor said that she doesn't know what sometimes I used to come, I used to go a lot, Fridays, and I used to tell the nurse, I see you moving your eyes, I was singing Shalom Aleichem for you. There's no, it's a reflex, it's not, she's not moving her eyes. I said, are you sure? That's what she said, it's a reflex, anyway, go prove it.
Don't listen.
What? I remember that it was eventually she passed away. But anyway, this is, what I want to bring out is the other side of the story. The other side of the story is not only the fact that murder is so extremely forbidden, so the Torah wants to make sure that we are, staying away from it, and by giving us such a lesson that will obviously enforce to us the idea that murder is forbidden. There's another message here. The message is the life of an individual. Individual life is the life of our all. It's not that life is a community, life is when there is a family, life when you are a part of this great, experience. A single life, one man only, one child only, one woman only, is a full life. The Rebbe has a famous insight. When you read the blessings of a wedding, the Sheva Brachot, it talks about Adam and Eve. Right? It talks about Adam and Eve. That's how the brachas go. It says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Yotzer Adam, the one who created Adam, right? Who created Adam. And then he says, Samach tesama ve'imahuvim, kesamecha v'yetzircha began Eden mikedem. This couple should be as happy as Adam and Eve were happy in Gan Eden mikedem, before the sin. Okay? What are you talking about Adam and Eve all the time? like what does this have to do with this couple? So there's all kinds of jokes, Adam didn't have a mother-in-law, a father-in-law, all the mice that everybody knows, and I'm sure you heard it in different weddings. But the Rebbe says something very, very classic and very original. The Rebbe says, because when a couple gets married, you want to remind them that you should look at your life and at your action, at your achievements, at your losses, exactly as you are Adam and your wife is Eve. There's nobody around, just you. Imagine Adam and Chava, when they had to do something. We know what they did. Their action had such an impact in a way that till today we are dealing with that, the sin of the tree of knowledge. There was one person. Why is it so challenging what they did? Because they were the only people. So that it's one person, you are the only person, so obviously the consequences are pretty clear. Says the Rebbe, that's what we sing, we praise, a chasna and kala. They don't think that you're, just one of the many couples who are getting married, many families are being created. No. Gan Eden mikedem, like Adam and Chava, you should look at yourself, that every move, everything that you will do, everything that you would not do, has an impact of the entire world. This is Adam and Chava. There's a famous story in the Gemara. We always speak about Yosef. When Yosef was in Egypt, and he was in the house of Potiphar, after he was released of jail, he was working for his master. And the Torah gives us all the details how when he was away, the master was away of the house, and the wife was there, and she wanted to sin with him, and he ran and he left his coat in her hand. All these details. And the Torah tells us what happened. What happened? So the Gemara says, if you look at the verse, it says that nobody was home. And that's what almost got him to stop them from sinning. Who was that somebody?
Yeah.
What?
Hashem.
No.
Yeah, his father.
What?
His father.
Yeah, the image of his father. His father wasn't there. But somehow the image of his father came peeking through the window. And that image stopped him from sinning. Sometimes you just see the image of your father. Actually, my wife's grandmother, Mrs. Weiss, the Rebbe sent to Los Angeles a great chassid to be a shaliach. His name was Rabbi Reichik. Rabbi Reichik, he was a very holy man. And he was, at that time, he was young, but he was, And she said that, when we came to Los Angeles after the war, we weren't necessarily dressed the way our mothers were dressed. They weren't even covering their hair. They weren't, the early 50s, the late 40s. They were still confused. What's going on with life? And she said, but Rabbi Reichik, whenever somebody heard, sometimes used to stand outside and water their gardens, and somebody said, oop, Rabbi Reichik is coming around the block. And they all ran into the house. They all ran in back to the house. They didn't want Rabbi Reichik to see them uncovered here, or maybe the sleeves were not completely covered. And why? She always said, because he reminded us of our father. Even like the image reminded us of our father. Their father was in Auschwitz. He was burned. But somehow, when they saw Rabbi Reichik, they saw their father, and they knew that their father would not appreciate the way they are dressed. Verstehst? And that's what happened to Yosef. So the Tosfos said it wasn't just his father. It wasn't just his father, not the image of his father. It was the image of whom the father looked like. You know who Yaakov looked like? Yosef. Maybe Yosef looked like Yaakov. But no, Yaakov looked like. The Gemara says, that's in the Talmud. The Gemara says that from all the people, Abraham and Yitzchak and all the tzaddikim who existed, the one who had the image and the beauty of Adam was Yaakov. Shufrei the Adam, Shufrei the Yaakov, me'ein Shufrei the Adam. It's in the Talmud. The Talmud brings sources of that. That Yaakov had the features and the look and the image exactly of Adam. Sometimes, if somebody knew Adam and he knew Yaakov, when you saw Yaakov, you said, oop, this is like Adam. The Rebbe always used to say a story, and I don't know why he used to cry when he said that story. The Rebbe always used to say a story that when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe came to Israel in 1928, he came to Israel. The one and only time, the only Rebbe was in Israel. After he was sent out of Russia, and he says that for him it's very important to visit the grave sites of his father, of his Zayda, previous Rebbes. But now that he doesn't have the grave sites to visit, he's going to have to go to Israel to go to the Kivrei Tzaddikim, to the grave sites of the Tzaddikim in Israel. So he was the only Rebbe who was in Israel in the summer of 1928. He came back just before the massacre in Hebron. That week he was on his way home. So the Rebbe always said the story that a Chassid who knew the previous Rebbe's grandfather, known as the Rebbe Maharash, Rebbe Shmuel, which we don't have a picture. That's from the only two Rebbes we don't have a picture is the second Rebbe and the fifth and the fourth Rebbe. The Mittel Rebbe and Rebbe Shmuel. We don't have a fourth Rebbe. Even from the Alter Rebbe, there's a picture, the whole story with a painter, I made a picture. But there's no picture of it. But here the previous Rebbe was in Jerusalem, the summer of 1920. And a Chassid who knew his grandfather, still in Russia, in Lubavitch, came in. The Rebbe said he wanted to deliver him bikurim, fruit. He came in, and this Chassid fainted. Fainted, literally, in the room. And they woke him up from his faint. What happened? I said, what do you mean? I came in, I saw the Rebbe Maharash. I saw the Rebbe Shmuel. Like to him, he knew what the Rebbe Maharash looked like. And apparently the previous Rebbe was very much looked like the Rebbe Maharash. So when he saw the previous Rebbe, he saw, wow, this is like the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash passed away already, many years earlier, 18 and he saw the Rebbe Maharash, he fainted. Sometimes. Says the Gemara that Yaakov looked like Adam. And that stopped Yosef from sinning. In other words, that explains, Yosef did not just not sin because he saw his father. It wasn't just his father. He saw his father. Would the father look like whom? Like Adam. Even you saw Adam, he reminded himself, look what one sin of one person can do to an entire world. The tree of knowledge. He said, okay, I gotta control myself. I got to hold myself back. Because it's not some, some garnished, as they say in Yiddish. Somebody nothing is doing a nothing. You are not a nothing. You are one that the Torah counts on you. When God came down at Sinai, what was the first 3 words he said? Anohi Hashem Elokecha. I am God, your God, not Elokechem. Elokechem is in the plural. He's speaking to millions of people. Who is Elokecha? Your singular God. God is pointing out that don't look at yourself as a part of this collective group, and I'm a part of one name in this big database called Am Yisrael, and this organization and so on. You are counted. You are counted as an individual, and your action can tip the scale to the good, or God forbid the opposite. Everybody is counted. Sometimes it's very difficult to realize that idea. Am I counted? Who am I? God has enough people who are taking care of his visions and his legacies and his ideas. Who am I? Oh, don't look away. Don't look away from me. I remember I always say this story. I was in Montreal. I just told it to somebody in Arizona. I was in Montreal, a young student, and I went to a shul, an old synagogue in downtown Montreal, to daven Mincha Shabbos. I walk into the shul, literally barely a minyan, mostly old people. And they're shouting and screaming. This guy is screaming at the Gabbai, and the Gabbai is screaming back. Like what? I thought it's screaming because the place is expecting that it's 6 weeks Aliyah and he wasn't called up to the Torah yet. I don't know why he was screaming. Screaming. What happened? No. He's screaming, why did you give me an Aliyah? Why did you call me up to the Torah? This old man is screaming on the Gabbai, why did you call me up? I don't want you to call me up. What's going on? Why is he so upset? And he said, I don't want him to know that I still exist. A true story. Let me be in my corner. I don't have to. I'm coming to the Torah. I'm saying a bracha. Suddenly start looking at you. Who are you? I'm not here. And he's screaming at the guy. I ask you, don't call me up. Let me be. As if God needs this whole commotion in order to identify. But it's a separate story. But he was a simple Yid, I guess. And he felt that by getting up, he's becoming noticeable. And he doesn't want God to be noticeable of him. Let me live my life. let me live my life. The same thing works the opposite. People can do all kinds of things and they say, garnished. What am I? What am I? I'm not doing anything. I'm not accomplishing anything. The Torah comes and says, in this week's Parsha, this is the Parsha before we are getting ready to Matan Torah, comes the Parsha and says what? Eile, Seul, Ezroish, Koladas, Bnei Yisrael, everyone is going to be counted. Everyone's going to be counted by name. And everyone's going to be counted by whom? By Moshe. Ato ve'Aaron, says the Torah. You and Aaron are going to be the ones who are going to count them. They are going to walk by you. You're going to stand there. And you're all going to walk by you. Legul galoisam. And each one's going to mention their name. So we should know that every single individual is counted and every single individual is a part of it. This is the way you're going to go and get the proper attitude when it comes this Sunday. And we're all going to stand there receiving the whole Torah, and live the experience and say, the Torah was given to the entire people of Israel. Yes, there was an entire people, but it wasn't just a people. There was a people who was made up from you and you and you and me and he and she. Everybody is one of those people who made up that group, that congregation, which was standing at Mount Sinai. And God said to each one individually, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. That's why this Parsha is being read now. We are all being counted. This is what the Rambam says, that we don't lose a life. We don't give up a life. It's not only because God and the Torah is very sensitive when it comes to murder. That's true too. But the other side of the coin is because we should understand and we should appreciate the power of the individual. One person, yes. Adam was also one person. And you know what? The Mishnah actually tells us in Sanhedrin, everything which was created during the 6 days of creation was in a multitude, was in a plenty. It wasn't just one tree, one grass, one giraffe. There was many of them, right? Everything was multiple, everything was in many numbers, with the one exception of Adam. Yechidi, you are one. God could have manufacture a bunch of them. Press the button, let them call them out, let them pop out, Many men, many women. No. One. It says the Mishnah, why? The Lamedcha, to teach you that saving our life, preserving our life is preserving an entire world. One life is an entire world. Every life has its potential, every life has its accomplishment, every life has its, being one child brings another child. Our life is a world. That's how it goes. So this is the encouragement and the inspiration as we approach this beautiful holiday of Shavuot. I'm sure everybody here has all the information to come and participate and to be a part of this great Yontif together. So God willing, we're going to celebrate together our amazing Yontif as a collective community, but also as individuals, each one receiving the Torah on their own. So let's all have a wonderful good night and a good Shabbos and a good Yom Tov. And we will see you, God willing, next week. Just remember, Shavuos is Saturday night and Sunday morning, and Monday is Easter. Make